And when it comes to the portal, Michigan is looking at the cornerback position, cornerback two for the Wolverines. And the latest player that Michigan has targeted in the transfer portal is a corner out of UMass named Josh Wallace. 4-year starter, two-time captain. If you notice some of Michigan's players that they've gone after in the transfer portal, Ladarius Henderson, who's now on MGO Blue, is on the Michigan roster. Remember, he wasn't participating in spring, the grad transfer out of Arizona State. Henderson was a captain of the Sun Devils. Drake Nugent, Michigan center, captain out there at Stanford. Here's Josh Wallace, a two-time captain at UMass, and somebody that Michigan is looking to add. And if it was just one corner, you'd say, okay, well, they really like this guy. But it's been a pattern in the offseason for Michigan. If you follow things closely, most of you do, you'll remember that Davison Igbenogson ended up going to Ohio State. Where was he at? Ole Miss, I think. Then you have Trey Amos, who was at Louisiana, a Ragin' Cajun. Trey Amos, Michigan was interested in Amos's services at corner in the transfer portal before ultimately Amos selected Alabama. So they have been in on corners. Amos, Igbenogson, and now Josh Wallace. We'll see if Michigan is able to score a corner in the transfer portal. And you just look at Michigan's roster, and I will do that in a second. As always, and on this Memorial Day, I tell you that this is one of the really great times of the year to join up with the Maize and Blue Review. Why would you say that? Well, you're a big Michigan fan, and you get into June and July, and a lot of people say it's the doldrums. There's not a lot of Michigan news to sink your teeth into. Well, on the Maize and Blue Review, we're offering up plenty of morsels for you to dive into. Stories, features, recruiting, transfer portal news all day, all night. So join up for the Maize and Blue Review today by going to michigan.rivals.com. So, before I get to the transfer portal I wanted to see if I could put a depth chart up there for the corners. And I think I can. There it is. So Will Johnson, we're all sitting here. We all know about Will Johnson and his ability. He could be the best corner in the country. So, I was comparing Will Johnson after his freshman year favorably to Charles Woodson. Oh, Will Johnson, you feel pretty good. I'm just laughing, trying to say you feel pretty good about Will Johnson. You feel great about Will Johnson at the one corner. The other corner, there's no Jymon Green, there's no DJ Turner. And you had heard heading into spring, Jim Harbaugh was praising Amarian Walker. And then we saw Amarian Walker in the spring game. He struggled. And so then you're like, well, what about the other number one in the spring game? Amarian Walker wears number one. So does Jaden McBurrows. And, so you got McBurrows or Walker. If the season started this week, would it be Amarian Walker or would it be Jaden McBurrows? It would be one of those two guys, likely. If you were a betting person, if I was a betting person, I'd have put my money based on what I saw in the spring game. I'd put my money on McBurrows. There are a host of backups that are right there in the two deep. Keyshawn Harris, he's been in the program for a while. He's a senior. Miles Pollard, a sophomore, one of my favorites. And then the two incoming freshmen and Jair Hill, speaking of the spring game, he participated and he looked good. Jair Hill, Cam Calhoun, highly rated there as well. One of those guys could end up figuring in at nickel. If Michigan's going to a nickel, we know Mike Sainristil came over from the offensive side last year in a pinch. Could you have him at corner and have somebody else in nickel? Sure, but he played so well, Agent Zero, as a nickel matchup guy. You would think that they would want to keep him there, but he could move over and be that that corner too. A little bit different, you line it up on the slot. I know it's you got slot corners and nickel corners, and then you have cornerback too. Wherever Sanders still fits in there, I think you'd like to slot him in there, right there at nickel. And then you have a couple of guys that you think about: Zeke Berry, Cody Jones. Both of those guys were standouts in the spring. Thinking about putting them in there at nickel, but clearly Harbaugh is looking towards the transfer portal for depth, for a starter, whatever he's looking for. We also look, the only other position that is getting like peppered in the transfer portal where Michigan's going after was kicker. I remember Michigan got the Louisville transfer. They've got the Mississippi State transfer. They've got a freshman coming in and a preferred walk-on that are coming in. And, all of those guys throwing an awful lot at the place kicking position. You get Jake Moody and you feel so good about what Jake Moody did. Harbaugh's like, we'll just keep throwing. Hopefully one of these guys, is able to, and that's what you think as a fan as well. Hopefully one of those guys, Turner, the transfer from Louisville, Hollenbach, the transfer from Mississippi State, Samaha from River Rouge in Ann Arbor would be the incoming freshman, or CJM, Cordell Jones McNally, a preferred walk-on. Could be him. And, Jake Moody was a preferred walk-on. So when it comes down to kickers, keep them in mind because you remember about Jake Moody.